Hello, today I welcome you to my world of watches, and in this video we are taking a look at this Addiesdive AD2044, and if you're planning on buying this watch, I would suggest you to watch this video till the end. Let's see what it's all about. So this Addiesdive AD2044 was sent to me for free by Addiesdive store. I get to keep this watch after the review, but this doesn't change my opinion on this watch in any way. So this one is a relatively new release which has some interesting design choices, but it obviously leans towards the Tudor Black Bay GMT. It has pretty good specifications, though there are some things to consider, so let's take a closer look. As with every video, we will be starting with the packaging. Comes in a standard Addiesdive box, just simple plastic box with cushioning inside, and you get your instructions manual as well as a warranty card. Super simple. I like the fact that it is very secure, and I use this case as my travel pouch when I'm going off to a different country. All in all, great packaging. Taking a look at the measurements, the diameter is about 39 millimeters, lug to lug is about 48 millimeters, the thickness is about 14.5, 20 millimeter lug width, and sized up for my roughly 7-inch wrist. With a supplied bracelet, it weighs around 125 grams. Now, the thickness is what I want to talk about, and really, in my opinion, this watch is a little bit too thick for one main reason. If it would have, let's say, an NH34 movement by Seiko, which is automatic, then I would understand the 14.5. Even then, it would be just a little bit too thick, but now it uses a Swiss Ronda quartz movement, which shouldn't take as much space for it to be 14.5 millimeters thick. I think it should be 11 to 12 millimeters at max. They could have gone with a flat sapphire crystal and maybe do a little bit more of an ergonomical design, and then the 11 to 12 millimeters would be entirely possible. It just looks a little bit too thick when you get it on, like it's raised from your wrist. Apart from thickness, measurements in my opinion are rather okay, and the watch is comfortable. Moving down to the bracelet, again, super simple, there's not much to talk about. A good looking Jubilee, it has push pins, the center part is polished as well as the sides, and the rest is brushed. Also you get a proper milled clasp, which is actually quite sturdy and looks nice, with an Addiesdive logo on it. Again, one thing to mention is that the clasp is a little bit sharp on the edges, just like it was on the previous Addiesdive that I've reviewed. Nothing that a little filing couldn't fix, but still. It also has solid end links. Apart from sharpness, the bracelet is quite alright. The case back is just simple screw on. As with most of these watches, you get Addiesdive logo and a whole bunch of writings all around it. It looks nice, Rolex style, really can't complain. This case back as well as a screw down crown gives this watch 200 meters of water resistance, which is nice. If you want to go swimming with this watch, I wouldn't advise diving, but a light snorkeling or just regular swimming should be just fine. While we're at it, we can talk about the case finishes, which are surprisingly really good. The sides are brushed, but the edge is polished. Also, the bezel grooves are polished as well, and it has different finishes on the crown. All of this combined gives it a rather nice contrast, which I do enjoy. Now, talking about the bezel, it is 120 click unidirectional, and it has an aluminum insert just like the Tudor Black Bay that it is a homage to. Looks very nice, the colors are done correctly, they're not too bright. I really like the matte finish that it gives off, and I like that the blue color is not too vibrant. The bezel also has a good grip, it is easy to turn and it operates how it should, but then again, there is one thing to consider. On most of GMT watches, the bezel is bidirectional. On this one, however, it is unidirectional, which leads me to believe that they just used this case shell on multiple models, and it was probably done for just a regular dive watch, and only then they decided to do a GMT, but they didn't change the bezel mechanics. Not that you're probably going to use the GMT anyways, but it still makes the operation a little bit harder, and it is pretty uncommon to see a unidirectional bezel on a GMT watch. The crystal is domed sapphire, it was tested and the result came to be positive, which is great, it adds to the longevity of the watch. Just before we go to the dial and the design itself, I want to talk about the operation as well as the loom. Firstly, with the loom, it uses uses a BGW9 on the indices as well as the hands, which means that it will be super bright in the dark and it will stay for a very long time. I really like that Addiesdive uses BGW9 on almost all of their models where it is possible. Really adds to the practicality, and in general the watch in my opinion looks better quality when it has proper loom. Talking about the operation, it is very simple. You unscrew the crown, and when you pull to the first position by moving the crown clockwise, it changes the GMT hand, and counterclockwise changes the date. And if you pull to the second position, you can change the time. Super simple and very easy to use. And we come to the dial itself. I opted for this white/silver color. They also have a black dial variation. To me, it looked the most lively out of the two, and I do have to say that this color combination with the Pepsi bezel contrasts very nicely. The dial itself has no sunburst effect, but it's not glossy either. It has a certain shine to it, which adds to the depth of this watch. Also, what is nice is that they didn't go for the printed indices. All of them are actually raised and they are applied correctly with a nice silver outer layer around them. The hands are also matched, and again a nice little touch of color with the red GMT hand, which not only matches the red on the bezel but the little GMT writing on the bottom of the dial as well. And you also get a nice little date window at 3 o'clock without Cyclops, which I do prefer. Then again, they are very modest with the writings, keeping it simple with just GMT and 200 meters or 660 feet on the bottom of the dial, and at the top we just have a Addiesdive logo as well as the name of the company. As I've said, this watch uses Ronda Swiss Quartz GMT movement. Not entirely sure why they didn't go for the NH34 from Seiko, but I guess the positive here is that the watch will be much more accurate. Though I do have to mention that the seconds hand doesn't hit the indices. Taking all of this into account, I do have to say that this watch looks beautiful on wrist and it has a very nice presence. The colors are bright, the watch does stand out, and I do really enjoy it. The silver color dial dances beautifully in the light, and sometimes you get a little reflection on the blue AR coated sapphire. In general, from the looks point, I do think they completely nailed it. So lastly, would I recommend this watch? In this case, I think it's really hard to say because the price is pretty good considering the specifications, but when you take into consideration the fact that there are watches that cost similar but have a more thought out design, it becomes tough to say for the majority of people. But then again, I review watches, I've had hundreds of watches, and maybe I'm just nitpicking. It's really not a bad watch, and the negatives I've mentioned are very minor, but there's still something to consider, so I'll let you make up your own mind yourself. As always, the links will be in the description down below, and if you like this video, please leave a like and also consider subscribing and hitting that little bell so you'll get notified when I upload a new video. And now thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.